Welcome to educator.com. In this lesson, you will learn to solve inequalities by multiplying. We will be working with solving inequalities by multiplying. Applications are making plans for large events. The multiplication property of inequality. When you multiply each side of an inequality by a positive number, do not change the direction of the inequality sign. However, when you multiply each side of an inequality sign by a negative number, reverse the direction of the inequality sign. So for example, if I had x over negative 5 is greater than 2, when I multiply both sides by a negative 5, which is the inverse of dividing, I must reverse my inequality sign to keep the value true. This is explained in the previous lesson on dividing inequalities. You can also check the explanation, and we'll talk about it in this lesson. The reason for dividing and multiplying by a negative number and having to change the inequality sign is that a negative sign is the opposite of positive, which means on the number line you would have to also change the directionality of your inequality. Multiplying by a positive number. A hotel banquet hall has 16 tables that can hold 6 people each. Write and solve an inequality to find the number of people at most a couple can have attend their wedding at the reception hall. All right, so let's try this problem. There are 16 tables that can hold 6 people each. And we want to find the most people that can attend. So 16 times 6 would give us the total number of people. But in this case, we want to write it as an inequality. So let's take the number of people, P, divided by 6, because we're dividing them up into groups of 6, and that is going to be less than or equal to 16. It has to be less than or equal to 16 because we have no extra tables. It could be at the most 16, it could equal 16, but it can't be any more than 16. So that's why we're going to say less than or equal to. So we take our total number of people, which is what we don't know. That's always your variable. We're going to divide by 6 because we're putting them in groups of 6. And once they're in groups of 6, at the most we can have 16 groups of them, representing the 16 tables. So the opposite of dividing by 6 is to multiply by 6. So P is less than or equal to 16 times 6. Notice that that's how we began our problem as well. So there are different ways to solve it. This was asking you to create an inequality, so we wanted to create first our inequality. So 16 times 6 is 96. P is less than or equal to 96. So at most, this couple can invite 96 people. They could, of course, invite less and still get them all into the banquet, but if they invite more than 96, they will not fit at a table. A plumber has some piping. He cuts the pipe into 8 pieces, each of which is at least 2.6 feet long. Write and solve an inequality to find out how much piping the plumber has. So the plumber has the total amount of feet of piping, and we don't know how much it is, so I'm going to say P for how long the piping is. And each section has been divided into 2.6 feet sections. Oh, actually, we're going to keep it 2.6 feet. And we know that when we take the total feet and divide by each little section, we're going to have no more than 8 pieces. But it could also exactly equal the 8 pieces. So let's take our total piping and divide by the portions it's been cut into, and we should get equal to or less than 8 pieces. The opposite of dividing by 2.6 is to multiply by 2.6. So those are going to cancel, and P is less than or equal to, let's take 2.6 and multiply with 8. 48, 16, and 20. with one place. So 20.8. P is less than or equal to 20.8. Well, of course we can't have 20.8 different pieces, but we can have the 20.8 for the total feet. So let's remember to go back and think about what this P represents. P here represents the total piping. So P is going to be less than or equal to 20.8. So this person has cut his pipe into 8 pieces at 2.6 feet long a piece, and his total piping, if we put them all together, is going to be 20.8 feet. Remember that in a word problem, you need to come back and include your units. All right, let's try multiplying by a negative number. X over negative 4 is greater than 28. The opposite of dividing by negative 4 is to multiply by negative 4. And remember we talked about that when multiplying or dividing by negative, your inequality sign must be switched. I'm going to put my negative so I don't forget about it. 112. X is less than negative 112. Let's try negative a half y is less than negative 8. So here, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is going to be negative 2. These are going to cancel because that becomes negative 2 over 2, which is a positive 1. So that's why those cancel out if you were to put that over a 1. So you've isolated y. Remember that your inequality symbol must flip around, and negative times a negative is a positive. 8 times 2 is 16. T over negative 7 is less than 5. So here we're going to multiply both sides by a negative 7. And those are going to cancel, and T is, remember to reverse the inequality. You could also circle it to make yourself remember. T is greater than negative 35. So in all of these problems, when multiplying by a negative number, you must remember to reverse your inequality symbol in order to keep the inequality statement true. A bowling league organizer wants 12 teams in the league. Each team must have at least 15 bowlers. Write and solve an inequality to find the number of players that need to sign up for the league. So the most teams that we have are 12. So we could have less than or equal to 12, but no more than 12 teams. And we don't know how many players there are going to be, but we do know that we're going to be putting them in groups of 15. So remember, the variable represents the information that you don't know. We don't know the number of players, but we do know that they're going to be grouped in groups of 15, and we do know that they're going to be less than or equal to 12 teams. So the opposite of dividing by 15 here is to multiply by 15. P is less than or equal to, and I'm going to do my division on the side here, 10, 6, 0, 2, and 1. 0, 8, 1. So he wants to ideally have 180 players trying out for the leagues. But if there's less than 180, that's fine too, because he won't go over his 12 teams, the organizer. So 180 people need to sign up for the league. A trio of street performers entertain nightly. Each performer would like to earn at least $75 per night. How much money do the 3 performers need to earn for each performance? So trio means 3, so we know that we're going to have 3 performers. And each performer would like to earn at least $75 a night, so less than or equal to $75. Of course, they could always earn more. So let's actually call it greater than or equal to 75. Okay, so they ideally would like to earn more, but they know that at the very least, I guess, to keep their jobs going, they need to earn $75 per night. So what we don't know is the money. That's going to be M, our variable, and we're dividing by 3 because there's 3 performers. So the total money divided by the 3 should at least equal 75, hopefully more. The opposite of dividing by 3 is to multiply by 3. So M is greater than or equal to, and 75 times 3, 21, 22. So the money should, at least for each night, be $225 if each of the 3 street performers wants to take home $75. Of course, they could always make more, but at the very least, they need to make $225 each performance. Write the inequality for the word phrase, then solve the inequality and graph it. The quotient of a number x and 7 is at least -9. Quotient means divide, and we have the number x and 7. So we're going to put it right in that order, x divided by 7. At the very least, it's -9. So that means it could be more than -9. So we're going to say greater than or equal to -9. Now the opposite of dividing by 7 is to multiply by 7. And x is greater than or equal to -63. Now, here we've been multiplying by a positive number. So even though there's a negative here, it was pre-existing, it was already on the side, and we weren't multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So notice that our inequality symbol has not been reversed. Now lastly, the second part of the question asks us to graph it. So I'm going to take -63, put it somewhere in the middle of the graph, and all right, so now we're going to put a circle around -63, and notice it can also equal 63. Whatever is colored in means that it can also equal that value, and it's going to be everything larger than -63. So we're going to color to the positive, towards the positive direction, the greater direction. I notice that I'm also coloring in the arrow to show that it can keep going, just as the arrow represents. More numbers to the right, we're going to color that in because x could also equal the numbers to the right. Solve the system of inequalities and graph the solution. So let's take -6x less than or equal to 48 and x plus 5 less than or equal to 11. So let's solve each one separately, and then we'll see if the variable falls in between the two values. So -6x less than or equal to 48. I'm going to divide both sides by -6. And x is, notice I'm switching the inequality because I was dividing by negative, greater than or equal to -8. All right, so that's my first parameter. X is greater than or equal to -8. Now let's solve this second one. X plus 5 is less than or equal to 11. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, and x is less than or equal to 6. Notice I did not reverse the inequality sign here because although I'm working with a negative, it's just a subtraction. You only reverse the inequality sign when you're multiplying or dividing by a negative, not when you're subtracting. So x is less than or equal to 6. So if I combine these two inequalities, I have -8 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 6. So you see that x is a value that falls in between -8 and 6. When you're rewriting it within two numbers, you want to make sure that your inequality sign faces the correct direction. So for example here, the mouth of the inequality, the open side, is facing x. So I kept the open side facing x. And then here, the small side was facing x, and it still is facing x here. Be very careful when you rewrite your inequalities that you keep the symbol in the correct direction. Don't reverse it. Otherwise, your inequality will no longer be true. Now let's go ahead and graph it. We have 6 up here. I'm going to count by 2's. 4, 2, 0, -2, -4, -6, -8. And we have a circle around -8 and a circle around 6. Circle around -8 and a circle around 6. Now this equal sign tells me that x could equal -8. So then I'm going to color in -8 because colored in means that could be a value. And it could also equal 6. So I'm also going to color in the circle for 6. And then what this system of equations is telling us, inequalities here, is that x can be anything in between. So I'm going to color in everything in between. And there, we've solved the system of inequalities here and put them together and then graphed them. Thank you for watching Educator.com.